Oh, wonderful.
Hello, you join me on a windy day in the garden, so this part of the video is voiced over. And I am dividing up this perennial, which is a Bergenia cordifolia. Now this one's quite easy because you can see it's got some quite defined stems, and the stems have roots on each part of them. So essentially all I have to do is, for the first one here, is just pull it off. And you'll notice it will just come away with some root. That's one plant there already divided. And then I will if you see here with this part, there's roots on this bit of stem, and then there's roots, the fibrous roots, on the other side as well. So I want to divide this into two again, but I'm going to need to saw through this because it's quite stiff. If it was still in the ground, I could have used a couple of sharp spades, but the way I've dug this up is I've just dug it up and then see what I've got. So it's a bit difficult to do here, holding it so you can see properly on camera, but I'm just going to nick through and saw through, and then I should be able to pull away and have a nice clean cut. And there we are. You can see the clean cut there, and it's got some nice bits of fibrous root on both plants. And this is just a process of whatever I've dug up, I'm going through and just determining what I can get away with as far as separating it into smaller plants that still have fibrous roots on. You can see with this one, there's nothing really I can separate to get another stem out of this plant. So that will just be as is, and I'll just clean it up. All I'm doing is pulling away some of the dead leaves there, just throwing them to a side. You'll notice I'm wearing gauntlet gloves, and that's because they were a little bit infested with ants. Allowed the bed to dry out a bit to try and sort it out, and I'd moved the ants on from somewhere else, and that's why I'm wearing these gauntlet gloves. And why it's good and wet is because I've watered it to try and wash that out. Here's a great bit. It's got loads and loads of bits which I can just pull away, and I've got lots of new plants with stems on. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to take all these through to the potting shed. And here's another bit to saw. You can see all the fibrous roots, and that's what you're really looking for. Is you don't want to be pulling something away and leaving all the fibrous roots on one part of the plant. And again, how much you separate these down depends on how many plants you want and what size clumps you want to maintain. So you can just tear some of these apart. There we go. And it's still a good clean tear there, so that's fine. Now I like to do this job in early spring. So early to mid-spring is fine, but you know, traditionally as well, autumn's a great time to do this in the fall. And as you can see, from what was a relatively small clump, I'm getting lots of plants. Now I'm going to take all these plants that I'm separating through to the potting shed.
We've got a few different plants here. What I'm looking for first is any leaves that need to be removed. So there's one there which was a sort of healthy leaf, but you can see it's just peeling away. So we'll get rid of that one first. Put that up there. Right, spent flower heads. Get my secateurs, and we're just going to take this spent head off just at the base there. We're checking as we go for any things like slugs, snails, etc. This leaf's looking a bit tatty, and to be honest with you, this is a nice balance of leaf with these three here, just for the plant to establish itself. So I've done that. So that's my first one. Put that to a side. Next one. Again, lower leaves. That one's had plenty bitten out of it by some snails. A couple of spent flower heads on here. Grab my secateurs again, down at the base. There's a little one, but I think I managed to break that off. So again, reasonable amount of leaf there. I could take one of those out because it's being shadowed by the other. Now, normally I would take this slightly tattier leaf off that's had a bit of a nibble, but with these it's always easier to break the lower leaves off, and now they're not overlapping. It's a nice healthy plant, loads of root on that. Okay, so that's another plant. This one here, there's very little root on this one, so I need to make sure that I reduce the amount of leaf as much as I can. Okay. Okay, that's left 3 little leaves there. Now I'm just going to take this flowering head off. Actually, that leaf didn't quite completely dry. There you go. Just there. So here we have some multi-purpose compost, and I'm just adding some slow release fertilizer to it, and this fertilizer will release over about 6 months. So that will see it from the spring through to the autumn, or if you were doing this in the autumn, it will see the autumn through to the spring, and then you would want to just apply a top dressing of fertilizer again, or fertilizer and multi-purpose compost again. And this would work great either in the beds or for potting up perennials, which we're going to do. And again, if you were putting it back into the beds, all you would do is, when you're planting the plants into where you've dug them out of and spacing them round, just incorporating some of this mix in with it. That's nice and moist. So what we're going to do is put that straight into the pots now, and I've got some sterilised reused plastic pots that I'm using, and they've got lots of holes in the bottom of these pots, so there's going to be really good drainage. And I'm going to take a couple of these pots, and the idea is that I use one pot to compress down the compost level in the other a little bit, not really hard, just gentle firm. And what I'm doing is getting out any big air pockets. Alternatively, you can just give the pot a good tap against where you're potting up. And I'm just finding the right level, and that's great. And now I'm just filling in, holding it in the center and just filling in around the plant. And I like to fill it up to the top and then gently firm down. You're not compressing it, just a gentle firm down. Again, getting rid of those big air pockets and just for keeping it stable. And then in the top here, I'm going to apply some horticultural grit. This is a washed grit, which is nice and safe to put on plants. And what this mainly doing is helping me retain the moisture in the compost, because it stops that top layer of compost drying out so quickly in the sun and in the wind. So it's saving water, saving me having to water the plants so much. And what a beautiful Bergenia this is. So that's it really, just give it a water and it's good. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, perhaps you'd see a way to giving me a like and subscribe.